Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to the Empowered ECE. Oh, this filter's playing games with me today. I hope everybody is having a great start to their day. It is Friday. Fridays are awesome. Everybody loves a good Friday. I'm also really excited because we're going to have a conversation with a very special person that I see in our audience right now. Susanna, she's going to be talking to us about conflict resolution. And I'm absolutely excited to have this conversation because I know I've been in leadership in many different occasions, and not problem solving. Conflict resolution is something that we all leaders and even educators and anybody in the field, we kind of struggle with a little bit. So let's get to it. Hi.
Hello.
How
I'm
are
just
you?
fixing my filter. I am great. How are you?
I'm good. We all need a good filter, right? Oh my goodness.
It's an absolute must. Absolute
Right?
must.
So excited for you to join me in this space. But yeah, let's get started. So tell me a little bit about you, or tell us a little bit about you and what you do in your business.
Sure. So first of all, thank you so much for having me. And I apologize in advance if my dog barks. I've tried to, sort of sedate her with treats, but she's unpredictable. So I am a lawyer turned conflict strategist and coach. And what that means is that if you are in conflict, I am uniquely set up to help you through it because I understand what happens when people can't resolve their conflicts. And in fact, most of the time, the cases that I dealt with in my 10 years of being a trial lawyer were because people just blew up their conflict resolution. And so it needed to come to me. So I can help people I can either be neutral or not. So if you are in a conflict with someone else and you're trying to, I don't want to say win because that's not quite the energy we're going for, but if you're not sure how to navigate it and stand your ground, I will step in and help. But also, if you're perhaps an employer and you've got two employees that might be kind of butting heads a little bit, I can come in and sort of mediate that situation and try to find a way for everyone to work together and be united and support each other in their goals.
That is incredible. That's incredible. So definitely, I was really excited to talk about this conversation and talk about conflict because, like I was just saying before you hopped on, in our field in early education, we work with a lot of people. We have conflicts sometimes with parents. Sometimes we have conflicts with our coworkers. As a supervisor, we may have conflicts with, some of our staff here or there. And I think it's just so amazing to meet somebody that is so passionate about conflict. It's so interesting to me. So that's why I was so excited to bring you on. So let's talk about that. What makes you so passionate about conflict resolution in that process?
Oh, what a great question. So first things first, I should tell you, confession, I hate conflict in my own life.
Like plot twist.
Conflict makes me feel awful. Like I know, total plot twist, but it makes me feel terrible. Like I get really anxious. Like I am a recovering people pleaser or like a people pleaser in remission. So I really struggle with conflict in my own life. One of the reasons why I came into this role, though, is because I discovered that by learning how to navigate conflict myself in my own life, that was actually a superpower. And when I looked back, particularly in my 20s, I realized that a lot of the problems that I had or a lot of the areas of dissatisfaction in my life were because I could not, for the life of me, stand my ground. And I wasn't comfortable engaging conflict. When I didn't do it effectively, and sort of I would either just completely compromise my own wants, or I would go nuclear. And both of those are not very helpful. But as soon as I started kind of doing a little housekeeping and dealing with the areas in my life that needed me to show up in a very effective conflict engaging way, all of a sudden, I'm not the kind of person that talks platitudes, but my life changed like exponentially. And so that, coupled with helping people through conflict in a legal arena and sort of seeing the emotional toll that it took and wanting to really help them, not only with the surface issue of the lawsuit, but just in their experience of it, really drew me to this kind of work because conflicts are really opportunities for us to transform. Like they are an opportunity for us to look deep within, see what's going on, see what stories we're telling, and see what's preventing us from understanding the other person and to fix it. It's actually really cool when you think about it.
Wow, it really is. I love that last part. It's an opportunity to transform. I
Yeah.
think more of us have to have that mindset. If we did, we'd go in a little bit easier with conflict if we had that mindset. But I love that you plugged that in there.
Thank you.
Amazing. Okay, so I know this sounds like an obvious question. I'm sure people in the audience are just like, yeah, that's an obvious question. But I'm curious to know from your perspective and from your background, why do you feel that conflicts in the workplace happens?
Oh, so I don't think that's an obvious question. That's
Okay,
a
good.
great question. So conflict in the workplace, I think happens, so there's 5 levels of severity of conflict in the workplace, Anisha. So the first one is just differences, where we have differences of opinion. And sometimes I think what happens is people will attach significance to those differences of opinion. And so they're unable to respect that difference and move on collaboratively with that person. So what tends to happen is we will make an assumption about the other person's motives, we'll interpret the situation a specific way, or sometimes we'll even interpret the situation and give it significance in sort of a so what factor that is just exponentially larger than it really needs to be. So the minute we start to feel some discomfort, our biological responses will kick in. And a lot of times we end up in like a victim or villain type mentality, fight or flight. And the train leaves the station before you even know where it's going. And so we'll tell ourselves stories, so-and-so only did that. So-and-so took their lunch break before me because they're trying to get the best of me, or they just don't respect me. Or, if I don't have my lunch break right now, then the rest of my day is going to go pear-shaped. And all of that may not be true, but often it's ourselves, it's our stories that we're telling ourselves that really, really set us up for conflict.
Yes. Oh, I love that. I love that. Wow. I just love your energy when it comes to, that's why I'm like, I need her on this conversation because in early childhood, especially, I know everybody can relate to conflict, but especially in leadership, we avoid conflict a lot when really, like you said, it could be transformative. It can change the conversation. It can change how people feel after, going in and really dissecting what's happening, and finding empowerment through it is really important. And a lot of us would really benefit if we think like that.
Oh, completely. And I love what you're saying about leadership, because conflict gives us actually a really unique opportunity as leaders. So first of all, if you're encountering some resistance with your team, I love to explore that. And I was not always good at this, Anisha, by the way. Like I'm sure there are people who have worked with me in the past who'd be like, whoa, that girl had a lot to learn. But now, and sort of having learned and done some of my own work, when I'm encountering some resistance with members of my team, I love to explore that, because sometimes they actually have good things to say. And I shouldn't say sometimes, I mean, always they have good things to say, but they might have an idea of how things can be improved, or maybe they see a problem that I've missed. And so I love that second set of eyes, and I love to explore that with them, because that actually could be an opportunity for us to better ourselves as a team and better our systems. But more importantly, I think when it comes to the relationship, is showing that you're willing to engage that and hear them out actually can really strengthen that leadership relationship. And, it just show that you're there as a leader to actually empower them and help them along in their career, which then increases staff engagement and decreases staff turnover. Really, it's a must, really.
So many connections, and that mixed with relationship building, which I'm sure you'll definitely agree with too. That was something I would always advocate for when I was training leaders and stuff like that, especially in my coaching. That relationship building is also key, because when you mix that with proper and well-rounded conflict resolution skills, you're really becoming almost nobody's perfect, but a great leader in that aspect when you have those principles with you as well.
Oh, for sure. And, and nobody needs to be a perfect leader, but a lot of times, and actually studies have shown this, that when leaders are afraid to show emotion, that actually can erode trust. And so if you're willing to kind of acknowledge your own imperfections, acknowledge your own limitations, that can build trust. And really, nobody's a perfect leader, but everyone likes to see a little bit of themselves in someone else. And so if you're showing a bit of a human side, that again can just build engagement, foster trust, and ultimately, I mean, I always think about the bottom line, Anisha, when it comes to, staff turnover. And we all know staff turnover costs money, right? So if you can save yourself money and strengthen relationships and improve your leadership style, why wouldn't you do that?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's so funny. I'm totally learning from you. Oh my goodness. So funny because I have worked in many different spaces where I was the conflict resolution person, but I never really understood why. But as I'm listening to you, those skill and tactics, I have them within me, but I just
Yeah.
don't know the words to them, because that's exactly like just being able to be vulnerable. That's one thing that I definitely loved, showing in my leadership, showing that I'm human too, and I make mistakes, and I'm able to call myself out on those mistakes too. And then the conversations really change with your staff after then, because now it becomes a safe space.
Yes, absolutely. And that's the thing, that's almost step one, is to create that safety for the staff. And I'm not surprised actually to hear that you were the conflict resolution person, either official or unofficial, because you do have that nice energy about you, and kind of that openness of, yeah, talk to me, like, tell me what's going on. And it's this beautiful component, which you have, and we've talked offline, so I can say this, but you're really great at listening to understand. Like, there's this genuine curiosity about you, which would make you just a natural for conflict resolution.
Oh, stop it. You're so sweet. Okay, so there was one thing that I saw on your website, and I was like, I absolutely have to make sure I get this right, because it was just golden. And what it said was, conflict doesn't have to be hostile. It should be productive. Could you expand and speak about that a little more?
Absolutely. So this just goes back to reframing the way that we view conflict. And sometimes when we think of conflict, we think of the more severe ranges of conflict. Would it be helpful if I went through sort of what those?
Yeah.
Okay.
Go for it.
So, so we first have differences, which is where you might see something one way, I see it the other way, and I'm like, that's cool. Thank you for sharing that with me. Let's figure out a way for us to work together, right? And that's actually neat, because that's where you can grow, and really, that is quite productive, because you might have ideas of how to do things. I might have ideas of how to do things, and like putting them together might actually serve, everybody much better than just having one way of doing things. So differences are totally fine, and I think they're quite productive. The second one, which is also not so bad because it's pretty easily resolved, are misunderstandings. And the most common, the one that pops to mind is, how as professionals, we're pretty dependent on our calendars. Yes. And if there's a misunderstanding of the way something's entered in the calendar, that can be catastrophic, in the sense that you go to the wrong spot, or, you have your meeting on the wrong day, or you don't show up to an IG Live. So those need to be addressed, and they can be addressed really, really easily. And, the relationship can grow when you show that, hey, this is a safe place. I see, everyone mixes up. That's fine. Let's fix it. Let's move on. Because if you don't address it, then it could always happen again. Misunderstandings, though, if they're not addressed, can escalate. So it's really great to resolve those as soon as you can.
Yes.
Then we start getting into, oh my goodness, I need to look this up again, but I think it's Discord. Oh my gosh, what is the third? And I can't look it up. But the third one is basically where you have, it's disagreements, the D's. Yeah. Where you have disagreements, where essentially you have one view of things, I have another view of things, and even though we've talked about it, we're going to have a hard time moving past it. And so one of us needs to give in and compromise, and that compromising usually comes with a little bit of sulking,
right?
At the risk of being too kind of elementary about it. The person who has to do the more of the compromising will sulk. And so if you don't kind of address that and try to get a little bit further beneath the surface, then that can actually sort of, that can kind of simmer and start to boil over. And so that can actually really escalate. Then we have discord, where we both have our different views on things, and it actually starts to escalate into being a relationship issue. So, you see one, actually, there was one, I saw it today, Don Cherry and Ron McLean. They're not friends anymore. I saw this on Facebook, and it's because Don Cherry went on that rant, that awful rant, really, and obviously lost his job. And Ron McLean was like, I can't be friends with somebody like that. Like, that relationship was injured by that sort of difference of opinion. And, I think we all have our opinions on that, and you probably don't need to guess where I stand. Like, I think I'm kind of team Ron on that one. But that's where you have a relationship injury, and that needs to be fixed in order for people to move forward together. The last one is polarization. And we saw polarization in the pandemic, right? With vaccine mandates, mask mandates, the freedom convoy, like that really, really got serious, right? And so polarization, when you've got two sides that are polarized, it really needs some specialist intervention. So that's the kind of thing, you know, with conflict. I don't think it needs to get to the polarizing state. I don't even think it needs to get to discord or disagreements. I would like to see conflict, and I think conflict can be very productive when you address it in a lens that allows it to be either a difference or just a misunderstanding. So it doesn't need to escalate. And if we could just sort of take a second, see what stories we're telling ourselves about the situation and the other person, then it can be actually really productive and transformative. That was a very long-winded answer to your question.
No, you nailed it. Yeah, you definitely nailed it. And that's exactly, I know what people need to hear for sure. And I love how you mentioned that it doesn't have to always be a blowout. And I think sometimes we hesitate to go into and go through those steps you've mentioned because we're afraid of that possible blowout sometimes. But if you take the necessary steps and you know you're coming from a space of wanting to understand and listen to learn and actually come to a resolution, there's nothing to fear at that point, right?
No. And that's the other thing. And, you know, you can always, you know, I think one thing that I always shied away with conflict was I thought conflict meant I would lose a relationship. Like I thought speaking my truth automatically meant that the relationship was going to be gone. And you can approach it in ways that don't compromise the relationship and that actually keep a safe space, you know. So one way to do that is actually just to say right off the bat, you know, this relationship is really important to me and I would really, really love to work this out with you and hear you out. But I want to make it very, you know, clear right off the bat that I'm here to understand because I care about this relationship. Like this is, you know, I care about our success. Just get that, like nip that in the bud.
Right in there. Yes. Yeah. And I can imagine being, you know, the person on the other side and hearing that first, that just brings you right down. That brings you right down to say, okay, so we'll be good by the end of this. I'm happy. I'm good with it. That's all that matters.
Yeah. Like, you know, this is not the end of our relationship. And also sort of having that mutual understanding of in order for us to really thrive together, we need to be able to each talk about our perspective of the situation through a lens of curiosity. And, you know, let's lay out our intentions. Like one thing that I say a lot is, you know, if you're very clear with the intention of, I really want to understand, and I might blunder into a few sentences, but my intention is really to understand and try to explain myself. Also, like when I'm in the thick of a conflict, I already told you I hate conflict myself. I'll even say, I'm nervous and I might misspeak. And so if you could just give me a little bit of lenience so that I can try to express myself and I'll do the same for you. You know, just really kind of go in there with that intention, and that can really help de-escalate things.
Yeah. Wow. You're giving some real gold tips there, honestly. Oh my goodness. Okay. So I know you spoke about this already, but I definitely want to hone in on it a little bit more because I know I definitely want to use this live for everyone, but also for leaders, for my leaders, my supervisors, the ones that are in the front line that are either dealing with certain conflicts or being a part of mediating them. Do you have any tips specifically to people in leaderships or like the supervisors in ECE that might be looking to strengthen their, you know, their skills in this area?
So I have two tips. One of them is I've actually prepared a playbook for conflict. You can go through and it will walk you through step by step of, you know, the thinking and identifying the stories that you are telling yourself. And also even things like, what significance am I placing on this situation? And it breaks it down. So I'm sure you know this already, but I'll repeat it because it is gold. So your thoughts impact your emotions, which then impact your actions, right? So if your thought is in some way flawed, and if it has, you know, if you're making an assumption or an interpretation, or if there's some kind of a limiting belief there for you, like, you know, the staff are always going to be upset about any kind of change. That's an assumption and a limiting belief. And so we need to check that, because if our emotions are dependent on that thought, which might not be completely accurate, then we need to check our emotions at the same time. So that's one tool that people can use. The other thing I would say is stay curious. You know, like check your assumptions, check your interpretations, and if somebody's upset about something, approach it with a lens of curiosity. And I would even go a step further. My partner calls these generous inferences, you know, benefit of the doubt. But, you know, ask yourself, why would a reasonable, well-meaning person be behaving this way or saying these things, or just sort of like reacting this way to this situation? Because that will help you sort of neutralize the assumptions and interpretations you're making about the situation, and help you open your mind to the idea that we might need to give someone the benefit of the doubt. And so sometimes, and this is not a stretch, especially with a pandemic, and I see Talisha just waved. I really hope I pronounced your name properly. But especially with your the audience that you serve, like they have been, I would say, maybe even a little bit underappreciated in the pandemic, and we have asked a lot of our ECE workers during the pandemic, and so it's not a stretch to ask, how is that? What toll is that playing on the situation? And because maybe they're reacting in a certain way because what they need is support. So stay curious, and don't jump to the anger before you make sure that the other person is actually doing okay. And I realize that might come across as soft, but my respectful kind of counterpoint to that would be that I would much prefer a leader who takes a softer approach, just to check that stuff before they jump to a disciplinary kind of authoritative response.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think a lot of people struggle, especially in leadership, in that area where they feel as if leadership is defined by being an authoritarian kind of figure. And then kind of wonder, like, oh, everybody doesn't like me.
Yeah.
Nobody likes me. Nobody wants to put in the extra work here, or want to stay back those couple, extra hours to help.
Yeah.
So it's hidden in that.
Yeah. And, and people just want to be cared about. And at the end of the day, everybody wants connection, right? Like that's something, even if you say that you don't, that what's that song? No man is an island, or that saying, no man is an island. And so they want to feel cared about. And ultimately, I think leaders are there to serve, and they are there to make life as easy as possible, obviously with their boundaries, but empower your people to do their jobs. And so that, I think if you approach it with that lens, you're already going to be better off with your staff.
Amazing. Just gold. We just packaged this whole conversation. I've been struggling with this filter because the eyelashes are like going all over. Anyways.
I didn't even notice. I think you look beautiful.
Good. Oh my goodness. Anyways, so for the viewers that are in a place where they're listening to this and they're like, yes, I'm ready for that next step to strengthen my conflict resolution skills, what steps do you, or what tips do you have for that individual to make that first step? Let's start there with that first step.
With me, you mean, or in general?
In general. We'll start with in general. Yeah.
So I think the first step is to notice. So you want to notice the way that you are responding in conflict scenarios, because oftentimes, especially when we zoom into that fight or flight response, it's automatic, and we are just, we almost surprise ourselves at how we respond. So we need to start with noticing the way that we behave in those. I had a client who's brilliant, and she called it a stress snap situation. So, notice how you feel when you start to feel like steam's going to come out your ears. Notice what thoughts you're telling yourself. Notice, the connection between your thoughts and your emotions and your actions, and observe without judgment. And sort of say, okay, I'm going to start to identify my conflict style. I'm going to start to identify the physiological signs when I start to feel like I'm going to snap. That is step one. I think step one is generating that awareness. The other thing that's really important, Anisha, is to really be clear on what you're trying to achieve. So you need to be clear on your goals, not only for that relationship, but in general, because if you are, I've had clients come to me and they're in a bit of a spat with a coworker, and then I say to them, what are your goals just in general, your career goals? And they'll say, oh, I want to be a leader. I want to be, in leadership. I want to be promoted. And my response in that is, okay, well, we need to think about whether engaging in the conflict with your coworker is actually worthwhile.
Right.
So, we got to have those guiding principles. And some of my clients are saying, no, let's just jump straight to the strategy.
Yeah.
It's really hard to build a strategy when you're not clear on A, what's causing the situation, but B, also what you are looking to achieve yourself for that relationship and in general.
Absolutely.
So those are two things I would say to start with.
Amazing. Golden as as from beginning to end. So as we get to the end, my final thing is basically how can viewers connect with you and maybe work with you and stuff like that? Maybe share a little bit of that, because I'm sure people
thank
are
you for
eager
asking. Yeah, so they can pop on over to my Instagram, and there's a link in bio, and it will give you some options. So one of them is to download that playbook. And by the way, I should say, I mean, I use the playbook myself, and sometimes I'll use it after a conflict, because we're not perfect, right? I'm not perfect, and sometimes I'll just say something, or I'll end up in a conflict, and I'll want to go back and debrief and figure out what happened, right? Because that knowledge is really powerful. So the playbook is good also to sort of dissect the situation, do a bit. I think there's a physician on, and so I'll say, post-mortem on the situation just to see what happened. The other thing you can do is you can book a free 30-minute consultation with me. And I make it my business to try to be as helpful to you as possible in that 30-minute consultation. And I'll try to get a gauge on what's going on in the situation, and then I'll make some recommendations. And sometimes it's a matter of, we just need to spend some time to get some clarity. Like, let's see what's going on with you. Let's see what your conflict style is. I have this, you talk about energy. I have an energy leadership assessment that I give people, which talks about the roles that they assume as a leader and in conflict. And then sometimes, people will just need a little bit of time. I'm very quick about getting the clarity and also the strategy. And, we just have a few sessions together, and they're off to the races, and they do their thing. So everything is very, very individualized for the client, because none of us respond to conflict the same way as someone else. There's always a combination. But my whole thing is, I would like you to see results as fast as we can. So we tend to roll up our sleeves and get to work really, really quickly after that first consultation.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Golden stuff from start to finish. Thank you so much for joining me. This is such a much needed conversation. I get approached all the time within the industry from board of directors and other leaders that just need, it's a common topic everywhere, no matter the industry, really. So it's so amazing what you're doing right now, and definitely keep to it. And you're changing the trajectory of workplaces and just making workplaces a little bit more manageable for everyone.
Thank you for saying that. Thank you for the important work you do, and thank you for having me, and have a wonderful long weekend.
You too. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.